Welcome to Counterpoint. I'm Tanya Granick-Allen. Well, it's no surprise that since COVID, many families across Canada are rethinking education delivery. With families forced to homeschool or supervise virtual schooling during the lockdowns, many have since sought alternative options to government funded, government delivered education. Take Ontario, for example. According to a Cardis report, the number of independent schools is up by almost 52% since 2013 2014. There are over 154,000 students enrolled in independent schools in Ontario. According to provincial government stats collected by Homeschool.today, in 7 provinces across the country, there has been an average of 49% increase in homeschooling, and that's post COVID. But is the government meeting the needs of parents who are seeking alternative schooling models? If parents are paying into a public system, how are those who choose education alternatives being supported financially? And perhaps the most burning question is why? Why are parents looking elsewhere? Well, later in the program, I will be joined by Jagwinder Sidhu, principal at Headway School in Edmonton, Alberta. But joining us now is Peter Stock, president of Homeschool Legal Defense Association. Thanks for coming on, Peter. Appreciate your time. So,
Thanks for having me.
why do you think parents are rethinking education?
Well, I think there are a range of factors, and COVID has pushed a lot of them to make the choice that maybe they've been considering for a long time. There are all kinds of problems in the public system. Declining standards for academics is certainly one of them, but that's been a slow decline over many decades, quite frankly. Um, there's increasing indoctrination in the schools. I think we're all aware of that to some degree. I think it's a lot worse than most parents recognize. And other problems that are related to social anxiety, bullying, um, mistreatment of kids, and so on. And a lot of those things add up to parents not wanting their kids there, and then COVID pushed them a little further. Masks and lockdowns and those sorts of problems.
And I think that many parents, when they had the opportunity to oversee their child's education virtually through synchronous learning or asynchronous learning, they're watching their kids' school on an iPad. They probably heard and saw some things that thought, I'm not really sure if that's a good fit for our family, especially when you talk about the social engineering, social indoctrination. There was, when it was sex ed class time, I'm sure a lot of parents were shocked at what their kids were learning. But, the proof is in the pudding. So we've seen that the number of independent schools has steadily been increasing since 2013, 2014. Is this surprising that even, I know you represent the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, but even for independent schools, are you surprised people are, looking outside the box in that regard?
Not at all. I think parents are looking for any sort of alternative, quite frankly, and so they've chosen private schools. They've chosen homeschooling. We've seen that in the numbers. They've also chosen something called learning pods, which is kind of a hybrid between the private schooling and homeschooling. Let's say where maybe parents uh, gather together their resources and hire a tutor or something like that.
Yes, I've heard of those things. So, what are the latest stats on homeschooling in Canada? Can you share with us some of the ones you might have on
Yeah,
hand?
so since COVID started, we've seen, we believe, over a doubling of the number of homeschoolers in the country. The number really took off the first full school year after COVID hit. That was the 2020-2021 school year. And it did drop back a bit this past school year, we believe. Not a huge amount, but certainly some parents said, "Well, things are kind of returning to normal," or maybe I found the alternative too expensive or too hard, or whatever the case may be. But what we have found is, at least with homeschooling, the vast majority of parents have stuck with it, even with things having so-called return to so-called normal in the public system.
Well, one stat I think I pulled from Homeschool.today, it said, again, the 49% surge post COVID. Again, that's after COVID lockdowns lifted. In Canada, BC, 5.2% of kids are homeschooled. That's a lot of children.
Yeah, it's very popular in British Columbia. It's the leading province in Canada. There may be a number of reasons for that. Certainly, when there's a lot of sort of migration across Canada to BC, and I think a lot of families when they change their living situation, and they may also be changing their lifestyle, and they may be willing to consider alternatives.
Okay, well, we're going to have to go to commercial break, but when I get back, I want to discuss more about what homeschoolers maybe should expect from their provincial governments. We'll be right back. We're discussing alternative schooling and how different options perhaps have opened up or may have we've become more aware of them since the COVID lockdowns, and now that they've been virtually lifted everywhere, parents are choosing other things. Peter, thanks again for coming on. We discussed that the homeschooling numbers are surging. As a parent myself, I can imagine that a lot of parents, had the time for once to kind of oversee really what's happening with their kids' schooling and thought, hey, you know what, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can do this at home, and maybe it's not that hard, or maybe I'm capable. So that's what I think is partially attributed to the surge. But when it comes to some parents, they say, well, I have to work and, I'm okay to homeschool. I'd rather hire someone, but that feels like I'm paying twice. I'm paying my property taxes to the education system, and now I'm going to have to pay a tutor in a homeschool pod or whatever situation. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, that really is a big part of the challenge. We live in a society where perhaps the norm, or at least what the majority does, is both parents work, and so we're used to sort of a dual income household. And homeschooling, in particular, probably requires one of the parents to give up full time employment. So it's a lifestyle change. It's more than just simply, oh, let's try going in a different direction with this particular aspect of our lives. No, it's actually a full lifestyle change for the family to take on. So back to your earlier comment, I do think that almost every parent is capable of home educating their children. But as I say, those there's a change in expectation about lifestyle that's going to have to take place as well. It's not a simple choice.
So, what would you like to see, or what options do you think should be made available to parents from the provincial government? How can the provincial government, I guess, best support parents who elect to home educate their children?
Yeah, our approach would actually be to ask the provincial government to stay out of the way. We've been doing a pretty good job as a movement. We see from the academic research that the achievement of kids who are homeschooled, when you consider core subjects, reading, math, etc., is on average far higher than what you see in the public system. So we're doing a great job teaching our kids. We're graduating kids that are successful, going on to university, college, wherever they choose to go. And we really don't need the government's help. And we find that when governments get involved, that doesn't go well for everybody typically. There's expense involved, and a lot of red tape and strings attached, and,
Right.
and we'd prefer to avoid that.
Yes, I can imagine that there would be a lot of red tape. What about a rebate, or what about a rebate for homeschooling books that isn't as necessarily onerous? Or, if somebody's electing to homeschool, clearly they're not utilizing the school education system. Why don't they get a refund on their taxes?
Yeah, it sounds great in principle, but as we have found typically through over time, whenever government's giving out a check, there are always going to be strings attached. So we'd like to avoid that.
Okay. And for parents who, again, are maybe new to this world and thought maybe they could homeschool and then change their mind, but now are rethinking things, we hear about maybe potential mask mandates being brought back up. Some parents get their back up with that. Obviously, we had a whole new trustee elections in many jurisdictions across the country, in like British Columbia and Ontario, for example. Maybe the school boards will be changing. What should parents be doing if they're considering homeschooling?
Well, there's a great website we've produced called homeschool.today, so people can check that out. That answers a lot of the basic questions families will have about what homeschooling is and how to get started. There's some great videos on there about how to do exactly that, access to resources, and so on. So we'd encourage people to go to homeschool.today and see what's available there.
And for some parents, they may say, okay, I can manage this for elementary school, but when the child gets to high school, this might be more challenging, more burdensome. There are a lot more intensive courses, mathematics, sciences, to name a couple. How does one manage and navigate those years?
Yeah, and I think a lot of parents, that's their instinctive reaction is, "Oh, how can I do that? I failed chemistry myself. How can I possibly teach it?" And we're sympathetic to that for sure. So parents who homeschool have found lots of ways to adapt to that situation. So there are online courses they can take. They can gather with other families and find parents who have the skill set in a particular course or area that maybe they don't have, and they can sort of share some of those responsibilities. And so there are ways to successfully navigate through the high school years. And what I will also say is they're very rewarding years to homeschool your children through. Your kids are growing in some incredible ways during the high school years, socially, emotionally, as well as academically, and you're preparing them for the real world, and
Hmm.
such a great time to be engaged in their lives.
It sounds wonderful. Well, listen, Peter, thank you so much for joining today. Really appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
We'll be back. Welcome back. We're going to delve a little bit deeper into why parents are choosing alternative schools or independent schools. And joining me to have that discussion is Jagwinder Sidhu, principal at Headway School in Edmonton, Alberta. Jagwinder, thank you so much for joining me today, and thanks for coming on. Why do you feel it is important to have alternative schooling options?
Well, we come from all different corners of the world, and we have different religions, traditions, languages, dances, music, poems. And every parent is hoping that these traditions are passed down to their children. And, when basically we come outside of India, we are thrown into a melting pot society like USA or something, and everybody wants hot dogs to come out, doesn't matter what they were before. And now that due to us, being aware of our culture being sort of totally washed by third generation, uh, if doesn't matter if you're a Jewish or Christian or a Muslim or a Sikh, we like to pass our things to our children, and that's why these things are important.
Yeah, I'm a parent too, and I agree. Definitely on the morality sense and the cultural traditions or even family traditions. I like to have my kids mirror kind of what I want to, what I went through, or I want to impart that kind of wisdom onto them. So tell us about your independent school. You're the principal of a school, Headway School in Edmonton. Why did you start it?
Well, I'm a product of Canadian culture, and people here are wonderful. I was 13 when I came, and after grade eight, I've been teaching since 1983. And what I see in public schools is, and Stats Canada says by third generation, only 30% of the Sikhs retain their Punjabi language.
Hmm.
So when I read these kind of things, then I also am seeing what's happening by third generation. Our culture is totally, washed out. So I was a special ed teacher till about 92, and then I decided, you know what? I need to do something for the community, and I want good Canadians. I want children to serve Mother Canada because she's really good for us. We are so, sort of liked in Canada. Mother Canada is really protecting us, and but we could be better citizens if we kept our own traditions and stuff like that, rather than becoming, fake somebody's. So
Hmm.
if we are real ourselves, we could plant our roots in here, and we have traditions that are very good for the mother country. So it's Mother Canada now, and I thought, you know what, I need a school where these children can grow with self-esteem after grade 12. And if you have self-esteem, you're going to be a better citizen. You have more to give to your fellow neighbors. But if you're always following others, you want to be somebody else, then you're not. You don't have self-esteem. And low self-esteem, you're not a good, productive citizen for Mother Canada.
Well, that's very
That was
interesting.
my
I'm
philosophy.
a child of immigrants myself, and I know what you mean. Like you have these cultural traditions and these religious customs and faith beliefs at home. And sometimes when you go to a public school, you feel you almost have to check that at the door because it's a more of a melting pot, if you will, at the school. So it's a very interesting perspective. Now, some I can imagine would push back and say, well, you are in Canada now. Why wouldn't you want your children educated in the Canadian way?
That's the problem. There might be education, but there is no one Canadian culture which children learn. 90% of these kids in public schools, they're borrowing stuff from New York or LA or Florida, and they're wannabes of what they're not. The real culture is in old countries, Croatia, India, England, France, Spain. You go to those schools, you see different kind of people, different kind of students. You go to a Canadian school, it's like, four carts, one cart, four, sort of horses pulling it in all different directions. There is no culture. So, and it's all borrowed through music or movies from USA. It's secondhand culture of secondhand people. So where's your own self-esteem? Nothing.
So
that's why
so that void would impact a child's self-esteem, you're asserting?
Self-esteem, their behavior. That's why only 40% of the children go to university and college. 60% of them we lose by grade 12. That, for the money we spend in Alberta, most in Canada, most in the world, that is not a good percentage. Sending 40% to post-secondary. And then the crime and this and bullying and all that. Why do independent schools almost send 100% of children to university and college?
Well,
It's because they have to.
I was going to say, we're going to answer that question right when we come from a commercial break. Please stick around. Welcome back to Counterpoint. We have Jagwinder Sidhu, who's on. He's the principal of Headway School in Edmonton, Alberta. And we're speaking with you, Jagwinder, because we have seen such an increase in the amount of independent schools and the enrollment of students in independent schools across the country. In Ontario stat rather, independent schools are up by almost 52% in less than a 10-year period. That's a lot. That's a lot. So obviously you feel like you're offering a different product and parents want to send their children to your school. You have a very successful school. Tell us what happens and what makes your school so different in a day-to-day way.
Well, first of all, I'd like to put in a comment that we are not Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, or Jews. We are not black, white, brown. Even any religion is divided, and all the religions are divided into two categories. Either we are traditionalists or non-traditionalists. And that's our brethren. The Christian schools are our brethren. Because we are the people who want to keep our traditions alive. The other side wants to wipe out all those kind of stuff and try to make a melting pot strategy, right? But fortunately, we are a multicultural society. It's in our constitution. But right now, that's just a lip service. It needs teeth, and it doesn't have it. Why our school does better is we have certain rules and regulations that got nothing to do with the religion. For example, our school, nobody gets to go out. Nobody comes in till grade 12. Sorry, you're in school. You're here to learn, not to visit your neighborhood friendly food stores and chill out for 3 hours. No students can come in from other schools and just to visit these people here. It's a school, not a 7-Eleven. These kind of things get the students focusing more on their future.
How do you keep discipline in check? Do you feel your school has a better discipline regime, or maybe you have fewer problems with your students?
It sure does, because we like to communicate with the parents 100%. The child sneezes, we tell the parent, your child sneezed today. This is not a complaint, it's just communications, and have a talk with the child, what's wrong with him, right? It's communications with the parents, and the parents have the right to raise their child the way they want to. They gave birth to the child. It's their responsibility. State cannot raise children. There's a different name for those government, and they are not democratic. So putting all those things together, when the parents are in control, when the rules are the same as the family room rules at school, usually family room goes this way and the school goes this way, and the rules conflict. And that creates, kind of doubt in the child's mind. And usually by 17, 18, family rules lose. The peers, 7-Eleven rules win. And that's why we have 60% of students, we lose them.
Wow.
That's why our school does better.
So with your school, and again, Alberta has a different, every province has sort of a different circumstance. Do you actually receive government funding in your school?
Yes, public school child, if you divide all the public school children with the money they get, it's about $13,500, $600 per kid per year. And independent schools are given about 5,500, which runs out to about 40%. It's not much. If we had 8,500 or something, like we get $700 per child from the parents per year, because we are not a rich, snobby school. And that's what often public schools say, oh, those independent schools are rich, snobby schools. No, we get $700 a month. We are not in the business of making money.
Sorry,
We are
700 a
in
year, 700 a month?
a year.
Wow.
Our teachers are the principal, we are poorly paid, but this is a mission for us. It's not a job. That's the big difference between us and public school. It comes from the heart. We want to do something. It's not like, I need more time off. I need a bigger check. Oh, I'm this and I'm that. So these teachers in independent schools have a commitment. So
What we only have 30 seconds left or so. What changes would you like to see in the public system? Some people say, well, maybe we should just abandon the public system. Some people say, well, we shouldn't bankrupt it. What changes would you like to see on practical
the
level?
government should think that we are bringing these people to Canada. Do we want them to be, brainwash them and turn them all into hot dogs, or we want to respect their cultures and even Christian brothers, their culture? They should have the money following the child because their parents pay taxes just like anybody else. These schools will be looked at like, I'm not saying they are residential school, but 100 years down the road, because they also wipe out the culture. It's a cultural genocide for my child to go there. In 12 years, it's just washed up. So we need schools where we can preserve our cultures. And that's the cry for all the religious people.
Jagwinder, thank you so much for sharing. All the best to you and your school and all the success for you.
Anytime, Tanya, I'm always you.
Thank you.